it's all about investing capital, and it's not always the right thing to do. If you are expanding, it's because you're using capital effectively. You're hiring a salesperson who makes $200,000 because he or she's going to produce $800,000 in sales. If you're doing that, it's a good idea. There are also moments where they don't pay off and you're wasting money. I have companies today in the portfolio that I don't think should expand very, very, very quickly because the product market fit is not good enough. Then I have others that need to go faster. They need to grab that moment right now. You're basically a race car driver that needs to go very, very fast, but not too fast. If you go too fast, you explode and you don't make the turn. If you go too slowly, there are 5 cars ahead of you and you're in trouble. It's a very careful balance.
Welcome to Inspired. I'm Alexa Von Tobel. I'm joined by the Godfather of New York City tech and also a dear friend, Kevin Ryan. He's someone who scaled DoubleClick from 10 people to 2,000 employees in just 4 years and sold it to Google for $3.1 billion. He then went on to build MongoDB, now worth $30 billion. Business Insider, he also built, which sold for $450 million, as well as starting companies like Gilt Group, Zola, Pearl Health, Transcend Therapeutics, and many more. So that's Kevin Ryan, founder and CEO of AlleyCorp. For 30 years, Kevin has had one superpower, spotting the future before anyone else sees it and moving faster than the competition can react. In this conversation, we're going to dig into how he identifies breakthrough opportunities across completely different industries, why he believes AI will transform work faster than we think, and the truth about what it actually takes to win, from hiring top talent to knowing when to move at breakneck speeds. I've known Kevin for over 20 years, and I can tell you that this is a masterclass in execution and in building what's next. So let's dive right in.
If you're running a startup, we know things like managing equity and communicating with investors are always top of mind. Carta has built a connected suite of tools that over 40,000 companies use to do just that. Their platform of software and services helps you lay the groundwork so you can focus on building. To learn more or get started, visit carta.com. And with that, let's welcome Kevin. Kevin, first of all, dear friend, somebody who's advised me through a lot of my own technology moments, I'll say. I'm so excited to have you on today. And I know we're going to talk a lot about New York City tech and the 30th anniversary and all these other great things. But I want to start with your childhood as somebody who's such a prolific entrepreneur. You have an interesting mix. You and I actually have something in common, which I don't think we've ever connected on, which is you were born in Milwaukee, spent some time in Switzerland and Italy, settled in Ohio for high school. I also joke that I'm a mutt. My mom was from Indiana. My dad was from Belgium, and that side of the family from Switzerland. I was born in Kentucky. You have like a very interesting worldview because you literally were exposed to so many places early. I just want to start with one simple question, which is, what do you think shaped you most in your childhood that kind of let you be somebody who's so confident and comfortable with risk? What would you say stood out?
Well, it's interesting because many entrepreneurs feel that they have this chip on their shoulder and they're overcoming something and that drives them. And I don't have that at all. I grew up in an incredibly happy, balanced household. Parents were amazing, great relationships with my siblings. Just from an early age, I was someone who was a sort of natural leader. School was easy, sports was easy. So I felt like I cruised through life, got exposed to a lot of different things. It was really a Midwest family. But because my father joined Caterpillar, we spent very key years from age 5 to about 13 in Europe. And that influenced, my perspective on the world, on new ideas, on thinking big. And so I think that played a factor. And then by freshman year of high school, I was just felt compelled to go to, I hope, one of the best schools in the country. I didn't know anyone who had ever been to Harvard, Yale, or Princeton. But even as I got accepted, I still had never met anyone from those schools. But I thought Yale was the place I wanted to go and got an early decision. And, I think that was another sort of upgrading of my life because I went to a very average high school and all of a sudden was seeing the world competition and the fact that everything was doable, that you could be a senator or a CEO or a Nobel Prize winning academic. That was a legitimate thing. And so I think that was very helpful.
I similarly feel like, going to college was like a moment where you're like, wow, look at what the world can be. You are just a really prolific entrepreneur and have built some of the most influential companies the last 20 years. Forgive me while I take a minute and just name a few. I'm not going to be able to name all of them because you've also touched so many startups. But we've got MongoDB now valued at $30 billion. Business Insider, which I remember that one very intimately, was acquired for almost $450 million. Gilt Group, which is when I met you, which at one point reached $1 billion valuation. We've got Zola, Pearl Health, Transcend Therapeutics. You've launched AlleyCorp, which is your venture fund that also incubates some companies, of which I've seen many of. And through all of that, you've been really intentional about New York City tech, which I love since I'm also here. When you think about what about you has helped you be in the right place at the right time, doing so many of the right things, how would you reflect on that in a way that people can learn?
Well, look, some of it's luck. I mean, I joined a media company in 1994 and was CFO and COO of this 150-person division. And I read about the internet and I launched an internet site. I just thought it could be super helpful for us, very interesting. And, the one great or lucky revelation I had by the beginning of 96 was that the internet was going to change the world. It was going to be the most fundamental trend in my lifetime. And that I wanted to go leave my relatively cushy, successful corporate job and go start a company or join an early stage company. And so by doing that, and that became DoubleClick, DoubleClick was a rocket ship. So I joined a company that had 10 people. 4 years later, we had 2,000 employees in 25 countries. So crazy growth. We went public 24 months after we started, which is just unthinkable today. And you have to, get all the logistics in place, the accounting, everything. Goldman Sachs took us public.
That is actually really wild, Kevin. Even like as we sit here and look at AI companies that are scaling from 0 to 200 million of revenue in the same year, to actually go public. I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah. During those 4 years, we made at least 12 acquisitions. Just so that the success of that company trained me a lot. I had to adjust very quickly to that fast growth, making good decisions going forward, not having fear, and realizing that, the reason today DoubleClick, even though it's part of Google, is the most successful ad tech company or division in the world, which is now 30 years later, is because we won the first 4 years. Our competitors were in 6 countries. They weren't as big. They didn't expand as fast. They weren't as aggressive. They didn't take those chances. And in this case, it really worked. And so by being the best, by having the most engineers, by creating the best product, all the biggest customers wanted to work with us. And actually, we've never lost that position ever since. And that helped me be a mentor and founder of other companies because, one, I had the credibility. People wanted to work with me because things I had done in the past. And I had managed a lot of people. I had fired a lot of people. I had seen so much during those 9 years. I felt like I had 40 years of business compressed into those 9 years.
You said something that I think applies to the world that we're in right now, Kevin, which is that speed really mattered.
Mm-hmm.
You got bigger, you were more aggressive, you were faster. And I think as we fast forward to 2025, that same concept is still true in a really important and powerful way. What have you learned about doing speed properly? Because speed can also be chaotic. Any quick insights there?
Well, first of all, it's all about investing capital, and it's not always the right thing to do. So there are probably many companies right now that are spending way too much money and they don't have a big enough market. They're not going to win. It's not a good use of capital. So it's not categorically true that everyone should do well. If you are expanding, it's because you're using capital effectively. You're hiring a salesperson who makes 200,000 because he or she's going to produce 800,000 in sales. If you're doing that, it's a good idea. There are also moments where they don't pay off and you're wasting money. So, each situation, I have companies today in the portfolio that I don't think should expand very, very, very quickly because the product market fit is not good enough. That capital would not be well used. And I have others that need to go faster. They need to grab that moment right now. I have one company that, it probably cost them $50,000 to sign up a big customer. but it will cost them in the long term probably $200,000 to switch a customer off a competitor. It's just so much more difficult. And when a market is new, it's much easier to get in. And so I want them to go very, very quickly. So yeah, but then a lot of it is execution and making decisions on the fly, having the resources, investing in recruiting, knowing you can move quickly because you have to get good people. Anyone can hire people. It's hard to get good people. And so you've got to strike that balance. You're basically a race car driver that needs to go very, very fast, but not too fast. If you go too fast, you explode and you don't make the turn. If you go too slowly, there are 5 cars ahead of you and you're in trouble. It's a very careful balance.
Kevin, as someone who has, and you just said something, which is, you got to know it when you see it. Like product market fit is there. As someone who's co-founded, successfully at least half a dozen, but really more like a dozen companies, and across so many different categories. Gilt Group was e-commerce shopping. Zola is a registry site. MongoDB is a data giant and cloud giant. And a digital media company and Business Insider. I mean, you've context shifted a lot. What is the moment? What do you look for when you're like, this is a great idea, I'm going to do it? Like, just give us the sense of what that looks like. Because I feel like I've witnessed some of it by knowing you so well. But how would you articulate what data, what feeling, what is it that all of a sudden you're like, I will build this, let's go build this?
Yeah, and look, let's not forget that you also get it wrong. So I have a lot of successful companies, but I also have a number of companies we started that failed after a year or two because the product ultimately was not quite compelling enough. And so the bet you're making is really on product market fit. Is there an opportunity? Do you have a vision for a product that is fundamentally different than what is out there? So Business Insider, as an example, was fundamentally different than the Wall Street Journal. Yeah, or Business Week. We were punchier, faster, online only, and there was an opening for that, and we were at the right time. Gilt did $175 million in revenue in year 2, which is insane. No company's ever done that, because there was no way to buy these fashion labels at a discount at that time online, and we were able to get the inventory to do that. And by the way, that market sort of went away. We did get it right, but it got worse over time, which is why Gilt was not as successful as it should have been, or could have been maybe, because there were too many other competitors out there that were doing similar things. I didn't like the dynamic, so then we sold it for $250 million. And then Saks sold that business for $5 million a couple of years later. So yeah, I'm always just thinking about where is the market going? Where is the country going? You mentioned Transcend, which is a psychedelic company trying to treat PTSD. That's a huge opportunity, something that we were ahead of the game 5 years ago and focusing on. We have taken a compound through phase 1 and phase 2 trials. The results are extraordinary. It's an unsolved problem. I feel good about product market fit there. So yeah, but it's a humbling space. You and I are invested in a lot of companies, and we think when we invest, we think they're all going to work. And the truth is, a high percentage, maybe half, ultimately don't really work that well, despite the fact that we all think we're kind of good at this. So it does feel like being a baseball player where someone's like, "Oh my God, you're a really good hitter in the major leagues," and you're like, "Yeah, I get 1 hit out of every 3 times." So it feels like there's a lot of failure along the way.
But I think you have a personality where the failure doesn't drag you down. I think you sort of you recognize the landscape. Our job is 40 to 50% will go to zero.
Yeah.
And you're looking for that one MongoDB worth tens of billions of dollars. And one of those makes you pretty successful in your life.
Yeah.
And I think that outlook of yours is extremely strong. Kevin, if you had 2 pieces of business advice that everyone listening could learn from you that kind of applied no matter what, when it comes to building and scaling a successful company and getting it right, just what would those be? Because I feel like you have truly, you're like a guy who's tasted everything.
I don't think my advice is very helpful because the thing about building a startup is it's more about execution. It's a little bit like if you said, why is LeBron James good? I know what he does. He drives and he shoots and he makes it. So there's no secret. He just does it better than other people. So if I said to you, make sure that that senior team is incredibly good. Every company you and I see, they think their team is good. And the truth is they're not that great, right? You can't, not every CTO is in the top 2% of CTOs. There is a big, big difference. Everyone thinks, oh, I know this guy. He's an engineer. He can be the CTO. Is he, like when we started Mongo, our CTO, Elliot Horowitz, who was quite young, was the most brilliant engineer out of the 700 engineers at DoubleClick. And so that's credible. But if I asked you, someone coming in, is your guy really the best out of 700 in a large company? Generally, the answer is no. They're good. They're not that good.
We talk about this a lot, which is like people don't really know what 0.1% talent looks like.
Yeah.
You could say that's top 3% talent, but you're not looking for top 3%. Looking for top 1%.
And there aren't that many. And you realize it when you launch a company that, and it has to do with talent, it has to do with drive, it has to do with some intangibles. They have to be able to recruit. I have a company right now that is hiring senior AI talent. And they've just had 2 people turn them down because they said, look, I make $10 million a year at OpenAI or Google, which is a staggering number. So I'm not going to take your salary offer for $500,000. Being able to persuade people to take big pay cuts and to believe in the vision is hard. It is hard. And the best CEOs can do that.
Yeah, you're right. I always say the best CEOs will success into existence, even when they don't necessarily have the ingredients.
Yeah.
Kevin, I'm so excited to talk about the future with you because you have been somebody in my life where I'd always come like, hey, Kevin, I want to get your opinion on this. What do you think? There is so much happening in the world right now, and we'll talk more about New York City tech specifically, but I would love just to step back and say, what are the things you're most excited about? What are you seeing? And if you had to give us like a category or 2 that you're really diving deep into, what are they?
I think the 2 categories would be vertical AI applications. So, the competition for big LLMs is playing out, but, none of us are going to get involved with that. So you have OpenAI, you have, Facebook, you have everyone, Gemini. But the applications that are in investment banking or, using for pathology or for supply chain logistics in hospital systems, those are being developed right now. And those are big opportunities. They are going to work. And so there are more to be done there. It's going to just replace all the SaaS software that was implemented in the last 20 years. So, and think of the market it's going after, because it's really going after labor, and how big is that market? And that's why AI is valued as high as it is. If I'm looking out the window right here at an insurance company building that has 50 stories, a lot of people in that building are taking care of claims. They're doing rote work. And the truth is those jobs are going to be replaced by AI. And so AI will be adding tremendous value. I have a company right now that, just quietly let go of 35 customer support people because 75% of our 5,000 inquiries a day are being handled by AI now. That's going to ripple through this entire country in so many different ways. The other area that I'm still excited about is in the deep science area. If we step back for a second, 15 years ago, when you and I met, e-commerce was an interesting space. And Gilt and Zola were companies that did very well there. I think that area is completely mature, and I haven't been involved for 7 or 8 years, even though I know the area well, because what need do you have right now? I can order anything I want online. It'll be here in 20 seconds. It's inexpensively priced. I can return it. I don't know how to do better. Whereas we are seeing breakthroughs in robotics. We are seeing breakthroughs in nuclear. We are seeing breakthroughs in psychedelics. These are all science-based things that through computing or other factors are changing the world. So the AI and basically real world applications are the ones that are changing the future.
By the way, on the AI, we have sort of a point of view, which is when the elephants dance, don't be an ant. So, Microsoft has 1 billion users. Google has 3 billion users. Stay the heck out of the things that they're going to focus on.
Yeah.
I want to double click, no pun intended, on vertical AI. What in vertical AI, when you're like, what makes you comfortable that whatever you're going after, or some of the many things that you backed, has enough defensibility?
Yeah.
How do you
So a
think
couple,
about drawing that line?
I'll use an example. I was the first investor in a company called Rogo that is creating a product that investment banks use to supplement or replace the investment banking analyst job that many of us did a long time ago. And so bankers at Lazard and half of the top 30 banks are already in pilot or have rolled it out. So it's a company that's probably worth close to $1 billion now. It's 4 years old. So what do I look for? I look for the fact that they're using certain proprietary data that isn't even accessible to other people. I look for the fact that most of those companies don't want to share their data with the large LLMs because they have their own proprietary data. And the third thing I look for is, are there hundreds of small features that sector needs that need to be done? In theory, someone can do it. But of course, the reality is they don't do it. They're not going to get to it. If you right now, Sam Altman is worried about one thing: is his general model better than Gemini or not? And right
Yep.
now, it's not.
Yep.
He has announced, for example, that he's going to go after investment banking. But is that what he's focused on? Is he personally calling on the big banks? Of course not. He's not going to get to it. The way that DoubleClick beat Google, and Google had to buy DoubleClick, 20 years ago, is because they didn't have 1,500 people focused on this one area that were from the CEO on down on every single element of the business. We just did a better job. And so that's what I look for there. I mean, Open Evidence is a good example. They have done a better job than all these large LLMs because they focus on that. Only that.
We're very much mind melded to you, which is very, very specific areas that happen to be big enough surface area, but they're edge enough. We did an autism LLM.
Yeah.
It's 1 in 34 kids.
Mhm.
So it actually really matters, but it's not something that OpenAI is going to come after tomorrow.
Yeah.
But that also isn't going to go away, and it's where the world needs advancement. So basically big enough but specific enough that it's
Yeah.
still on the outer edges of the war between the LLMs.
Exactly. And look, do I think that some of the large LLMs will buy some of these companies? Yes.
Yep.
If I were Google, would I be thinking about Open Evidence? If I were Google or Microsoft, would I be thinking about a Rogo over time if I think I'm not going to win? That could happen. I don't have our companies think about that. They just need to build the biggest, best, and most profitable company they can over time. And maybe they go public, maybe they sell. We'll think about that at a later date. Focus on the product.
Yeah, we're mind melded there. Quickly on also similarly mind melded too on sort of what we're calling like the acceleration of science, which is really sort of another huge surface area thesis. How do you think about that more specifically in places where your antenna goes up?
Yeah. So, and for example, we're having a conference called Deep Tech New York that we own. It'll be the first time in January on the 28th, 29th, around there at New Lab. We'll have 200 people, and companies going to be presenting science and technology breakthroughs in energy and nuclear, in materials science, things like that. And so I think it's really exciting. I think that's going to grow in New York for a while. So what gets my antenna up is, applications that are vertical applications. So I'm not thinking about a Roomba that is going to be in your living room. That's something that the Chinese are going to dominate over time. But there are very specific applications that occur in B2B businesses that are still enormous. So I'm excited about that. The energy side, that problem and opportunity is not going away. So very bullish on nuclear, on battery technology, on transformation, on geothermal, on watching what's happened in solar in the last 15 years is mind-boggling. The costs have come down 90%. It's the cheapest energy in the world, growing like crazy. So those things are going to continue to happen. We're going to continue to need more energy. We need to continue to get more efficient. So I love that field as well. I think we haven't done much in transportation, but the role, everything's going electric. And so I was an early investor in Archer, which is a publicly traded company for helicopters, but it's happening in planes, it's happening in trains, it's both driverless and electric. That's a $1 trillion opportunity.
Kevin, I always like to say that I come to work every day in 2035. I walk in, my job is to live in 2035, soon 2036. If we fast forward to 2036, in your mind, what do you see? What do you like? What's just like the stuff that you take as like almost terra firma of how you view the future?
Yeah, I mean, I believe most of what people are saying in technology, even though it will take a little bit longer than people think. But do I think that? Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we're getting close to 50% driverless cars in New York City by then. And I wouldn't be surprised if we're at, easily 50%, 80% new electric cars. That's happening right now. But also buses, subways, everything. I do think that we will have dislocation of jobs more than we would like. We'll absorb some of them, but I think there'll be a spike in unemployment. Starting a little bit now. We can already see that new hires are having trouble getting jobs. But I think that's going to accelerate. So I think there's 10 to 20 million jobs that we'll lose over the next 5 years. Some of those will be picked up in other areas, but some won't be. These are pretty big, dislocations. And I think that we will get the price of energy down. I think that we'll cross over the curve on emissions. The really good news is, the carbon emissions, for example, in the UK are now half of what they were in 1990. I mean, that is an untold story. China has hit peak emissions. They'll start going down. US has as well. So emissions will go down. The amount of fossil fuels we use has never gone down, but I think we get to the point where the supply goes up and the demand doesn't go up that much, and so prices will come down. All of that is good for the economy.
Let's take a minute to talk about job loss, because I know your value system and my value system are aligned to, we don't really want 20 million
No.
people losing their job overnight. Like that
No.
is not going to build the society that I think we all want. One thing I see, Kevin, is that many jobs that people don't want, so back office at a police station, literally just doing reporting, the part of the jobs where nurses and doctors are just documenting something that can be done so much more easily. We have observability businesses where like, no, you don't need to tell us that the telephone pole is tilted because like a device could tell us that. And so you didn't need to drive 3 hours to then drive 3 hours back to tell us it was in fact tilted. Lots of crappy jobs are going to go away, which actually then allow those same people to keep their jobs and do more important work where humans are more necessary. So I do have like a bit of an element of optimism where we're going to get rid of the jobs that actually no one wanted to do quickly. But you're absolutely right that we won't replace all the jobs. How do we not have chaos here in America?
Yeah, and it's too early to know whether that will really truly be chaos or not. Because as you said, we don't have enough doctors. We don't have enough nurses.
Yeah.
And so if nurses can be twice as effective by using technology, we don't even need to get rid of any nurses. We're just going to give better care to people. And that's really important. And you're also right. We have a company called Glacial that helps do recycling of garbage at waste plants. Right now, 50% of those jobs are not filled. They can't get people to do it. And so your garbage right now is not actually getting recycled, even though you think it is. And this can be done with a camera and a robot arm that can pick out the glass and the plastic. No one wants that job. It's slightly dangerous. It happens in the middle of the night. It's cold. It's terrible. And so feel good about that. And look, we've also seen, let's not forget, in the last 30 years, think of the input of computers. When I started my career, which was 40 years ago, the guy next to me who had started 7 years before did not have a computer as an investment banker. He did models for M&A for billion-dollar companies by hand. And we introduced computers. I mean, it's hard to imagine. It's not like 1,000 years
I
ago.
don't think that job sounds really tough.
Yeah. And so if I said to you at the time, though, every banker is going to have a computer, they're going to be very powerful. Does that mean there'll be far fewer bankers? And the answer is, well, wait a second. No, there's like 10 times more bankers than there were. So The introduction of technology did not necessarily eliminate all those jobs. You walk into a restaurant and the system is all, computerized, whereas, 20 years ago, there was just a woman who had a pad of paper and looked at where the tables were full or not. It's not clear that we lost jobs there. So we'll absorb a lot of it, okay. New jobs get created, along the way, and some are better, some are worse. 30 years ago, there weren't yoga instructors to speak of in New York. People forget that. There weren't SoulCycle classes. These are all mostly new, and tens of thousands of people doing that. So we'll absorb a bunch of them. It just depends on the rate. If we lost 10 million jobs over 5 years, that's actually very small in the scheme of U.S. economy. If we lose 10 million jobs in a year, it'll be harder to absorb.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It's going to be the rate of absorption.
Yeah. But I do think what I'm concerned about is that, we see in our portfolio, these are tech companies, forward-thinking. They are using AI effectively. My guess, if I went in to see what's in the bowels of, large Procter and Gamble companies like that, they haven't really implemented AI yet. They're working on it. They're thinking about it, but they are going to start doing that. And that will start to have a big impact. If I went into a big oil company, are they really using AI as well as they could? I doubt it. So that's where we're going to start to see that impact. And I think that's a 26, 27, and 28.
I think you're right. And my prediction is that as we begin to see bumpy markets and potentially even a pullback, I think publicly traded CEOs will use those moments as an opportunity to actually shed 25% of staff, but really because of AI. And never misuse a crisis. And I do think that we have some bumpiness ahead between now and a decade away. Kevin, I want to make sure we talk a little bit about SF New York. So as two people who sit here in New York City and run funds that invest around the country, and we both started things in New York City and are loyal and love New York City. And I'm very excited for our 30th anniversary, even though I was, not involved for all 30 years. I would love your opinion of what is New York crushing it at and that you feel really optimistic, and where should we be worried and we need to pick up the pace?
So New York is crushing it. And I think everyone loses sight because already they're having the conversation of, New York versus San Francisco. Last year, we surpassed San Francisco in healthcare funding. So we're already comparing, and people forgetting that only a decade ago, we were probably 1/5 of their size in healthcare funding. So it's just a dramatic change. Last quarter, VC funding in New York was 10 times Miami. Miami's so small, we don't even see it. So New York is crushing it. Now, that doesn't mean that San Francisco is not doing extraordinarily well and is still bigger and is still better on deep, large bets, crazy bets. I think San Francisco is still the best place for that. New York is a little bit more practical. Is this going to make money? Vertical applications. We're going to leverage off the fact that we have the industries. So, for example, the company I mentioned earlier, Rogo, that sells to investment banks. Obviously, you don't want to be located in San Francisco. There are no investment banks headquartered there. You have to be here. If you're selling to arts organizations, Madison Avenue, all these industries, you need to be in New York. DoubleClick needed to be in New York. Our clients were all here. So a lot of this is just, can you attract the talent? And what has gone so well for New York is the fact that New York has become more and more livable. In fact, our only problems in New York are due to success. Yes, apartment prices are crazy. Why are apartment prices crazy? Because of supply and demand. Everyone wants to live here. And we need to build more housing, and people are focused on it. And San Francisco has been, not run as well in the last 20 years. I mean, I feel slightly unsafe when I'm downtown in San Francisco, and I don't feel that way in New York. But New York San Francisco also has a great quality of life. People can live, there's more outdoors. So it's a very good city. But these are the two dominant cities. Are the raw material for our industries are 24 to 40-year-old people from the top schools, the smartest, most aggressive people in this country. And the number one place those people want to go is New York City. And that's not changing right now. The fact that there were 2,200 murders here in 1990 and I was living here. And this year, that number is going to be, I don't know, 320 is just staggering. So as long as we continue to execute as a city and keep having great bars and restaurants and ballet and art museums and cool things, then we will continue to do well.
I once had an entrepreneur in the last month say something to me that actually I think is um, an underappreciated dynamic, which is that if you are an SF, um, your team's sort of head on a swivel, being like, where should I maybe go next? Because you're kind of tech is the industry and you're constantly like this. I'm here because I've got to be the best at it. And as a result, if you're building something in New York, you may actually have more loyalty law and sort of long-term commitment for your team because to your point, these are industry companies in some ways, right? Your point of like it's arts, it's retail, it's e-commerce, it's healthcare, it's fintech, it's finance. Um, you sort of have people who are opting into a category that happens to make a lot of sense here. What I worry about for New York, and I'd love your opinion on this, Kevin, is the pace in SF is breakneck. It was not. We say AI really helped SF because none of us want a city like SF failing, but it was in a tough spot during COVID. Um, the the competition, the speed, the engineering focus is relentless. And how do you think about that, Kevin?
Yeah, no, I think it goes back to my earlier point, which is that I do think that we still um, lose some of the, I'll call it the craziest, most extreme, most dedicated tech only people sometimes gravitate to San Francisco. We get a lot of people who are very, very good and also want to, on the weekends, go to an amazing club, go to an incredible restaurant, or broader. Um, and that's amazing. Those are great. It was a big part of the ecosystem. But the sort of Elon Musks, if you think of that type of person, some of those people are in San Francisco and want that. It's a slightly different product. And that's what makes San Francisco an incredible ecosystem. I mean, look, the best companies here are working unbelievably hard in New York, but I agree that the San Francisco can be more extreme.
Yeah, well, I mean, particularly in this moment where the big dogs are in a full breakout
Yeah.
war of execution. And, I think Google is showing us that they are dominating.
But we
Kevin,
also see that OpenAI is hiring, hundreds of people in New York City, that Google are hiring hundreds of people in New York City or thousands and building it up. They need to follow the talent. And I have to look this up, but I wouldn't be surprised if, they're almost hiring more people in New York right now than in San Francisco.
yeah, that is a good point. That's a great point. Um, Kevin, I know we have the big 30th anniversary.
Mhm.
And to properly name you, you are the godfather of New York Tech. We're very grateful. And you've been an incredible mentor
Mm,
to me. I can speak, firsthand. You've been a wonderful cheerleader of my
Thank you.
career and everything I've done. What do you hope for New York City Tech in the next 15 to 20 years? I want to go further out than just 10. Like,
Yeah.
what should we be holding hands and making sure we make happen?
I think it's going to be more of the same, except that we're rippling through other industries. So, 15 years ago, we were not at all present in health tech. And now that is really happening. 5 years ago, we didn't have a deep tech practice. We didn't have a robotics practice to speak of. That is really growing. What you're seeing is, um, you know, frankly, like people like you and me who started, started a company in one industry, and then either, in your case, went off into VC, but or started another company in another space, and so just expand. It's like Adam and Eve have children, and it just keeps expanding and expanding and expanding. I'm sure in your company it's the same thing, but there are so many companies from Gilt and from DoubleClick, see people who work there who then, started other companies. And we're going to continue to see that. So I don't have any concern. I think as tech dominates the world economy, that companies, car companies are now basically tech companies. They're basically creating computers with four wheels as opposed to what they were really, mechanical engineering projects. That's an example, but that's just rippling through everything. Healthcare companies now are just tech companies that were looking at data. You used to go to your doctor and he would actually look at you or, feel your shoulder or things like that. Now, as you know, he looks at your blood results. It's basically a tech question now. It's analyzing data. So as that happens, we need to have companies that take advantage of every one of those things. We do, and they're going to continue to grow, and we just need to keep our people here. And so far that is happening. Everyone worries when a new mayor, when de Blasio came, everyone was worried. Turns out that the crime rate went down under de Blasio, significantly down, so that was much lower than under Bloomberg, which people didn't expect. I hear people worrying about Mamdani. I feel good about where we are. So we need to just keep doing smart things.
Kevin, before we move to the quickfire round, where we just get a few of your favorite nuggets, my favorite reason to sit next to you at a dinner or a cocktail party or anything is you always have some weird thing that you're kind of thinking about. Because let's be honest, you're really a learning machine. You are a very fast, speedy learning machine, which is really what a venture investor's job is to be good learning machines. Can you just give us any nugget of anything weird or interesting that you're kind of excited about or you've changed an opinion on? What would it be?
Not really. We're spending time on nuclear. We have a company called Valor that's really interesting there that I'm excited about. I'm still interested. You and I had a conversation about psychedelics years ago. I still think that is going to be a significant sector, even though it takes time. More in the robotic space. I don't have anything right now that I think is completely off the bleeding edge. I'm thinking more about GovTech.
Me too.
And so I really want, New York City, which has 300,000 employees, to be able to operate with 270,000 employees and give better service to everyone. So do 50% more with 10% fewer people. And we can get through attrition. So hoping that things like that occur, that education is influenced through technology. And we're in the beginning stages of that. So all these areas, the areas, I think when we all look at the charts that show what has become more expensive in the last 20 years, those are the ones that technology has not played the role in and still needs to. Education's a big one. Healthcare is a big one. And so far we are utterly failing there. There have been 10,000 companies that have promised to bring down the cost of healthcare, and healthcare costs are not coming down. Now, a lot of it's because of government and regulations and things like that, but we're not where we need to be, and our results are not where we need to be. So those are areas that I am very, very excited about.
Kevin, quick fire round. I want to ask just a few questions. And just first thing that comes to your mind, what is the biggest pinch me moment in your career? Like, what's the moment that you will kind of have burned into your brain?
Oh, definitely the realization that the internet was going to be big. And at the time, it was just a new concept. So I still remember reading about the internet in beginning of 95, this idea. And I was like, oh my God, if we're all connected, this would be incredible. And that sent me down a path. I was not on a technology path before, and that sent me down a path that I'm still on today.
That's pretty cool. Is there a book that has changed your life? Not a business book. It could be any book, but a book that is like a must read for me.
I don't think I have a one must read book. I should come up with that. I do read a lot. We have a book club. I read about 36 books a year. I'm actually on 36 right now. A combination of fiction. I don't read a lot of business books, but I read a lot of nonfiction. I read a lot of biographies. Robert Caro has the best biographies in the world. If there's one thing you should take away, go read the Lyndon Johnson biographies, or the Robert Moses books. Those are unbelievable.
I was talking about Robert Moses with my father-in-law yesterday. By the way, I should be invited to your book club.
Yes.
A few more quick things. Kevin, is there a mantra or a quote that you think just kind of runs in the back of your mind?
I mean, no, the cliched ones, I think it's Will Durant that said, why go out on a limb? That's where the fruit is. And that is sort of what we are doing here.
I love that, Kevin. Kevin, I love that.
There's, Grace Hopper, who was one of the first female computer science people in the world, and we named one of our colleges at Yale after her, said that, ships are safest in the harbor, but that's not what ships are for. And all these things are, we have to get out there and intelligently take risk. And I think one of the things we should appreciate the most about the US economy, which has been true for 20 years, but it's still true. When I'm in Europe, and you go to Europe quite a bit as well, we've had 241 decacorns in the United States, $10 billion companies, 14 in Europe. It's not 10 to 1. It's closer to 20 to 1. And somehow we have a risk-taking culture and financing and universities that are supporting that. And so I am worried that we're cutting back on research funding right now, which I think is clinically insane.
I agree.
If you're number one in the world, why would you stop doing that? It's like telling Brazil, why don't you give up soccer and focus on skiing? It makes no sense. You're good at this. So I hope we course correct there and try and focus on making sure science breakthroughs are the things that make the world a better place.
Kevin, last question, and you can pick which one. Do you want to tell us your New Year's resolution for next year, which I'm sure you are a guy, or the daily habit that you credit your success with? You get to pick.
One is a cliche, but staying in shape is the thing that is the most important. And I feel it more now at 62. I've been doing this for a long time, and I have always kept my pace. So I never feel burned out. There's a lot of things going on, and a lot of it is staying in shape. I'm a believer of not doing the same thing every day. So I do work out probably 5 days a week, but sometimes it's hiking, sometimes it's yoga, sometimes it's more and more lifting, sometimes it's cardio, sometimes it's playing competitive ping pong. But as long as you are doing that enough, and I'm happy to see in the last 5 years that we've seen even more credit to that it's better than any drug you can do. It helps your brain, it helps your heart, it helps everything. So if anything, I'm going to even do more of that next year.
I love that. Also, if we're honest, I think both of us are deeply, deeply energized by our jobs. They don't drain us. It actually fills us, which is why we do it all the time, and we do it for free and never want to stop. Kevin, I want to end on one proper thank you. Since I have met you now almost 20 years ago, something we didn't even get to properly thank you on this podcast for is you have gone out of your way to mentor a lot of people and to truly pour your energy and support and insight and relationships into other people. And I think that is one of the reasons why New York City has been more successful is that you are an incredibly generous human being of spirit. So thank you with all my heart. I cannot wait for all the time I get to spend with you in the next coming months. And we're just rooting for everything that you're doing. Keep going.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate doing this. And it's been fantastic to watch you in the last 20 years going from a young entrepreneur to an incredibly successful leader of tech in New York City. So I'd love to see that.
Thank you. You're the best, Kevin.
Thank you all so much for tuning in today. If you enjoyed the episode, please rate, review, subscribe. And we'll be back again with another episode of Inspired with Alexa Montobo. Thank you.